The creature bait category is one of the most popular lures in all of bass fishing, and that is because it is incredibly versatile. You can fish creature baits on their own Texas rig style, on the back of a jig or a chatterbait, or even put 5 on an Alabama rig. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But if you out there struggle with confidence when fishing a creature bait, this is the video for you, as I'm gonna go over my 5 secrets to finding success and catching bass on this lure category. My name is Tyler, and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Tyler's Reel Fishing. I want to talk about creature baits in today's video. As always, it is sponsored by something, and today is the video description. So if you want to shop for any tackle, whether it's rods, reels, baits, the AFCO clothes I'm wearing, I have all my affiliate links down in the video description. That's one of the biggest ways as an influencer I make money and provide for my family is using those links. So if you're going to shop, go ahead and use those links down there. It would mean a whole lot to me. Okay, so creature baits. I've got 2 in my hand right here of the same exact variety, and then I've got a bigger one and a smaller one. I want to talk about secret number 1, which is going to be the gear and the rigging, because if you don't get this right, you may still get bites on it, but you may not actually hook up to those fish and therefore not land those fish. And that's the end goal anyways. Now, just like many soft plastic lures, they come in all shapes and sizes, and creature baits are no different. You've got ones with 4 to 6 to maybe even more appendages on the sides, and you've got ones with, I would call a rage craw. Even though it's a craw in the name, I would still call that a creature bait, and it's just got 2 big claws. So to me, what differentiates a creature bait from a craw and a creature bait, especially from a worm, is just the average kind of bulky size, and usually has more appendages, more vibration and presence in the water than your average soft plastic worm, especially more than your average worm or smaller craw. So I'm just gonna name a few creature baits, have them here on the screen, that way you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking things like the rage bug, the rodent, the space monkey, the game hog, kind of brush hog category, and all sizes from super small to big within all of those lure shapes. And so now that we're all on the same page as far as what a creature bait is, at least that's my definition, my secret number 1 is the proper gear and rigging. So I've got 2 of these Strike King structure bugs right here. They are great, as you'll see later on in the video, for lots of different things. We're gonna go over several riggings here, but especially flipping and pitching around shallow vegetation. Taylor, pan over to the cattails. Very good location to fish this bait. You're gonna see lots of catches around those kind of things today. But the secret within the secret here is you wanna make sure you have the right weight and hook setup. Line, rod, reel, that kind of stuff is all secondary. It's important, but it's secondary to making sure you have the actual correct setup. So on a regular, I believe it's is it 4.5 inch? 4.5 inch Strike King Rage Bug here, your average size creature bait. I have a 3/0 VMC red line wide gap hook right there. This is actually the heavy duty, the extra thick gauge wire one. And the reason why I have this size is because 3/0 in VMC fits this bait just perfectly, where you can see it doesn't extend the shank, the bend of the hook too far into the end of the bait. I mean, maybe you could have it like right there, the very end. A 4/0 could fit, but a 2/0 may be too small. And so I have found in the hooks that I like to use that a 3/0 fits this bait right here. If I was throwing the mid-sized rage bug, I would throw a 2/0 hook because that fits that bait better. And if I was throwing a game hog, I'd probably be throwing, or a lizard, I'd be putting a 4/0 wide gap hook on there. So it may take buying a few different hook packs to understand which one fits your bait best, but you've got to throw the right size hook that still allows the bait to have good action. You're not inhibiting the action of the bait by throwing a hook that's too big. And if I was to put like a 1/0 or a size 1 hook in here, which they make those in a wide gap, it might not hook fish as good unless they absolutely eat the entire thing. And especially on big bass, you want to have the biggest hook you can get away with. But you also, at least what I found with creature baits, you want the smallest bullet weight you can get away with regardless of where you're fishing. So I have this one here on a 16th ounce weight, and I've got this one here on an 1/8 ounce weight. The 1/8 ounce weight has a 3/0 flipping hook, even heavier gauge than this, and this one's got a wide gap hook. Why the difference? Well, I'm casting this one kind of around the edge of the docks, outside, maybe dragging it through some grass, and so I've got this one on more of a dragging setup. And this one here with the 1/8 ounce weight and the flipping hook is more for actually flipping my bait or pitching my bait into the holes in the cattails, and that's why these 2 are rigged differently. Could I get away with throwing a wide gap hook in the cattails? I could, but I like the heavy duty, give them the business type nature of this flipping hook right here. And so I'm gonna tailor my creature bait rigging to the area I'm fishing and not just fish the same hook and the same weight for everything. And one secret within a secret, we're like secret deception at this point, is that you wanna make sure you have the hook point buried the correct amount for where you're fishing. So on the flipping one, you can see here, the hook point, hopefully Taylor can show y'all, the hook point is not out of the soft plastic at all. It is actually, when I rig it, it is buried in the bait itself, and maybe it pokes out just a teeny bit, but I'm not putting the hook through the bait and then back through, because this is going to be in all kinds of heavy cover, especially around cattails, lily pads, grass. It gets snagged a bunch if I have it rigged in the dragging open waterway. You'll tell the wide gap here, boop. I mean, it wasn't hardly in the bait at all, and that's the way I like it, because the hookup ratio is going to be better the further or the less weedless you have your hook. But if I threw it like that into the cattails, it would get stuck first cast. So again, I may be beating a dead horse here, but you have to understand that your rigging matters to be more efficient, to get snagged less, and to get the best hookup ratio possible. So I'll say it again. Open water, dragging scenario, just fishing from the bank, maybe at a pond, you want to have more of a Texas rig wide gap setup with the hook less put into the bait. And if you're flipping and pitching, casting it underneath docks, you might want to have a more heavy duty setup with the hook actually inside the soft plastic. And as long as the fish bites down on it and you give them the business, you're still going to get a good hook set, even if the hook is not quite as exposed. And if you're going to use a creature bait as a trailer, you want to make sure it fits the actual size jig you're using. So right here I have a 3-ounce Strike King tungsten thunder cricket, and I could use the full-size rage bug on this thunder cricket, but I think it would be just a little bit too overpowered. The trailer would be a little bit too big. Matter of fact, let me hold it up and show you. Yeah, you can tell that the tails there are a good 3/4 of an inch too long, in my opinion. And so if I was to have it like that, I just think I would get too many fish that would eat the tails and not get the whole thing. But the mid-size rage bug, just 1/2 inch shorter, really looks like a much better cohesive package. And I have a great hookup ratio using this creature bait on the back of a vibrating jig. I'll do the same thing if I'm fishing it horizontally, as in you flip the trailer this way for fishing it on a swim jig or a regular jig. Matter of fact, the skipping jig I'm gonna use today, I'm actually gonna put a mid-size black and blue rage bug to match the color on that. Now, should you always match color, or what should your color be? We'll talk about that in a secret to come. And one more thing I want to say about the rigging secrets is that the rod, reel, and line you have doesn't matter nearly as much as long as you're getting in the areas where the fish are, but you're going to see mostly heavy cover catches today. And so for that type of fishing, could you throw a 7-foot medium light spinning rod and get the fish out? Possibly. But you don't want to do that. You want to have a dedicated big bait combo. If you're getting into hardcore bass fishing, you need a rod like this. This here is the Custom Light 7.2 heavy fast action rod. I believe it's called the hollow frog rod on the bottom of it, but it works for frogs, works for flipping, works for skipping, works for small, 5 to 6 inch paddle tail swim baits. It is a great rod for that, and I'll use it for all those sorts of things. And I have 65-pound braided line. You might think, Tyler, are you catching a 65-pound bass? No, you're not. Well, the heavier braided line you have, the reason for it is because the abrasion resistance is there, and the strength is there. It has absolutely zero stretch. Matter of fact, probably negative stretch. It stretches back on the fish. And braided line, as opposed to a resin like monofilament or fluorocarbon, cuts through vegetation so much better, and so you're gonna get a better landing ratio when you're throwing a braided line, and the sensitivity is way better. So when I'm fishing a creature bait around heavy cover, I'm throwing it on braid, but when I wanna just have a good open water experience, especially fishing from the bank, I'm throwing it on the Texas rig setup on fluorocarbon line, usually 17-pound, maybe 15 if the water is really clear. So that is secret number 1 of fishing with creature baits. Let's get back to the studio to talk about secret number 2. Now, which location to be at when fishing a creature bait is kind of a loaded question, because they kind of work everywhere. I would say open water, like middle of the column, is probably the only place a creature bait is not meant for. But if you're fishing around wood or docks or grass or any kind of shallow cover and deep structure, a creature bait can be great for. But there are better or worse locations at certain times of the bass life cycle during the year. So during the spawn, the early, springtime season, which I know by the time I'm putting this video out is past for a lot of you guys, but fish love to be, matter of fact, they have to be around shallow, hard bottom. So rock, clay, gravel. And if you have those conditions, the bass are probably spawning or pre-spawn or close to it and dragging a creature bait, my favorite being the Space Monkey, around those shallow, hard bottom areas is perfect. So deep water or mucky bottom is just not good for that time of the year for a creature bait. During the post-spawn, the fish are gonna move to the first available deep structure out there. So you've got brush piles and usually grass edges, and that's a great place place to throw around a creature bait. And as soon as we get into like the summer and dog days of summer, the fish, or at least a lot of the big ones, are gonna be in super deep water. I'm talking anywhere from 10 to 30 feet of water on like the big obvious pieces of contour line. So you've got ledges, you've got points, you've got big rock piles and rock veins, maybe some larger brush piles or larger areas of trees. Again, great places to fish with a creature bait. So depending on the time of the year, there are good and bad places, but again, wherever you want to fish, if you're a pond angler and you only have certain locations to even fish at all, a creature bait, of course, can work. But one location I really want to talk about as it pertains to a lot of us as both bank, kayak, and bass boat anglers, especially in the warmer spring, summertime months into the fall, is going to be aquatic vegetation, also known as the layman's term, grass. I don't care if it's cattails, lily pads, maybe you have milfoil or hydilla that grows high enough that it actually tops out and forms a canopy on top of the water. Whatever kind of grass you have, as long as it has a 1.5 foot, minimum of water underneath it, the bass are gonna live around that area. Take, for example, this section of pencil reeds at a local lake that I love to fish. What you're seeing is about a 300-yard stretch of aquatic vegetation that I'm sure many of you as lake and pond anglers can understand. And like I said, it could be cattails, could be lily pads, could be aquatic vegetation of really any kind, but if you are a pond or lake angler, you have grass somewhere in your body of water, which is a great place to throw a creature bait. Now, not every location within the location is actually worthy of making a cast with this thing. So let's talk about the actual good spots to fish a creature bait in the drone shot you just saw. And I'm pulling out the handy iPad so we can mark on the photo. So looking at this area of cattails here, again, we just saw a drone shot, but I actually took a photo because I want to be able to mark on it for you guys. If I zoom into this photo, you'll be able to tell there are some inconsistencies to the area of cattails that I'm fishing. In some areas, they are growing pretty sparsely. Could mean that the bottom composition changes, or that's just the way that it grew this year. In some areas, it grows extra thick, like out here on the point. So I'm gonna select green here, and I'm going to highlight the exact stretches you should be fishing, at least in my 15 years of experience. What I have found in a place like this holds the most bass when flipping and pitching around a creature bait. So if I zoom in here, I found areas like this, right there, to be great because it's a really thick clump, but wherever it transitions to a little bit thinner is a great location. If I work my way over here, this little hole inside with a very sharp edge is a great location. And if I keep going this area, I'm just gonna kind of put some X's here on some good potential areas to be fishing your creature baits. Now, I'm gonna go to red and mark some areas I don't think are as effective. I don't think this entire area here, again, maybe unless they were spawning and they will actually want a little more open water to spawn around. Usually though, that's not the case. I would say this whole area right here is just a little bit too uniform. Bass like to be around, again, personal 15 years of anecdotal experience, bass don't like to be around just like the same old stuff all the time. And then I would say probably right in the middle of all this right here is just a little bit too thick of an area. That's why with the green, I marked an outline because you want to fish the edge of that. I'd say this right here, probably no good. Maybe they're in the super sparse stuff, but probably not right there. And I'd probably eliminate that edge out there because again, it's not that hard of an edge. The fish could really be anywhere in there. If I go back to green, I'll mark a few more spots. I can even zoom in here and get real detailed. That's probably a good little clump right there. You'll see that little section right there is probably a good one. Probably that little stretch there and that little line right there. So hopefully that'll make sense to you guys. Again, inconsistencies in areas where it goes from really thick to really thin in a short period of time are great places to flip around a creature bait like this one or this little Strike King rodent. And I believe I took a photo, yes I did, of a more detailed section here. And so I'll let y'all, Dora the Explorer style right here, tell me where is the good place to fish. That's right, it is right there. Is probably the first place I'd make a cast. I wouldn't fish a whole lot right here. I wouldn't fish a whole lot in this whole area down here. It'd really be that circle there, maybe some of these clumps right there, and maybe that big clump out there. Again, just for the sake of efficiency, catching as many fish in the shortest time window possible. I'm not gonna fish a creature bait around aquatic vegetation everywhere. So if you have a flat of hydrilla or a big lily pad flat, matter of fact, I think we have one more photo here. Yes, we do. Looking at this right here, you see lily pads, cattails, and shallow milfoil. The bass could be anywhere. And so if I'm fishing this area right here, I'd probably start by making casts towards these little patches of shallow milfoil right here. Again, the thickest clumps that I can find, maybe that one right in there. Then I'm going to move, I'll just switch to blue for the fun of it. I'll move to casting around the outside edge of the lily pads and the cattails. And then if nothing is working from there, I'm gonna go and make some targeted casts right into like the heart, the thickest areas of where the pads and the cattails meet. That's gonna be my progression from deeper to shallower water around aquatic vegetation. And if you fish all that stuff with a good looking creature bait and you don't catch a single fish, it's probably because they ain't there. Again, take what I say with a grain of salt, because for your body of water, the fish may display odd behaviors. But again, for almost all the places I fished, bass love inconsistent areas. They love areas of change. And you can find that in aquatic vegetation. You can find that in grass. You can find that in rock, and all those places. And again, this really applies to more than just creature baits, but all those places are great locations to throw a creature bait. You just have to be aware as much as you can. Not everybody has a drone to look at their fishing spots, but as much as you can, be aware of what's going on down there at your locations, especially shallow cover is concerned, because usually you can see that and you can really pick apart a lot faster a shallow location if you know what to look for, as opposed to just fishing everything with a creature bait. Now, I could go on for a dang long time about location and bass fishing, especially the best locations for a creature bait, because grass is really just the most applicable to everybody. We could talk for days and days, but that's for another video. Let's head on the water and discuss which hook sets are effective and beneficial when fishing a creature bait. Now, because creature baits have more soft plastic to them than your average worm or small fluke or small craw, it's gonna take a stronger and more powerful hook set to actually get it through the soft plastic, the hook that is, and into a bass's mouth. Which is why, if you remember back to the rigging portion of this video, I talked about using a thick gauge wire hook, a big, heavy, wide gap, or a straight shank flipping hook like the VMC one I have right here. But if you are making a long cast, let's say with 10-pound fluorocarbon, 15-pound monofilament, any kind of stretchy resin line, you're gonna have trouble getting a hook gauge wire that's this thick to penetrate through the plastic and into a bass's mouth. And especially harder if you're throwing your creature baits on like a medium or a medium light, especially rod. All those things are working against you into getting this exact combo, which again is what I think a creature bait is meant to be thrown on. It makes it so much tougher to penetrate the hook. And so that's why I recommended throwing a heavier power rod, a longer length rod, and usually a thicker or a heavier pound test line. And so if you've got the right combo for creature baits that you're comfortable casting and setting the hook with, I'm gonna talk about 3 different types of hook sets with a creature bait. The first one being kind of the standard strong sweep. So let's say you've launched your creature bait out there. It could be, again, on a Texas rig, Carolina rig, big shaky head, what have you. And your bait is very far away from you. A strong sweep is going to be the only hook set that really works to drive the hook into their mouth. So let's say it's a Carolina rig. I'm dragging my game hog out there and I feel a bite. The strong sweep consists of 3 main things that all happen kind of simultaneously. The first of which being, let's say your rod tip was a little bit high like this. You're going to drop your rod tip. You're also going to simultaneously reel in the slack line that is created when you drop your rod tip. And at the same time, to get the longest, strongest sweep, I'm not just dropping and reeling, I am pushing my rod tip a little bit more towards my bait like this. That way, by the time I start to swing backwards on the hook set, I have that hook driven in, not just from here backwards, I'm driving all the way from forward with the most momentum possible, the most strength, all the way through. And you're going to sweep strong and swiftly towards the shoulder that is not holding the rod. So the one that's holding the reel, at least on a bait caster. Again, strong sweep up into the side, just like this. I'd say it like a 2 o'clock angle. And once you've completed the hook set, you have that fish on, do not give that fish slack in the fight by going up and down, up and down. Just continue to keep pressure and fight that fish back into the boat. Now, the strong sweep is the slowest of all the hook sets, but usually if you're fishing water deeper than 8 foot of water, fish tend to hold on to soft plastics a little more when they're way out deep. And so you have a little more time to kind of let that fish suck it down. And I've just found that when I do a strong sweep well, I hardly ever lose those fish. Now, hook set number 2 is going to take place in areas like you see behind me right here, shallow, nasty cover, and it's called the slack line. Now, this hook set kind of has some controversy on the internet because some people say you don't even need to set the hook that hard. You bass fishermen, you're doing too much. And sometimes, could those people be right? Absolutely. I set the hook way too hard sometimes, but here on the channel, if it's useful and purposeful in certain areas, I love to give them the business, and that's what the slack line hook set is. Let me show you. Now, this hook set is usually useful in less than 8 feet of water, where you are like a half a cast length, if not just like a flip's length away from the bass boat or from the bank where you're standing. And what happens is the fish bites it, and your rod tip usually, again, because you are closer in proximity to the place where you're presenting your lure, your rod tip's gonna be higher, therefore causing, again with a shorter line, causing a higher angle from your rod tip to where your bait is, where the fish is, than on a long cast on the strong sweep hook set. And so what that looks like, I'll kind of use my two hands here as a demonstration. If this is you on the bass boat, and this is your area where the fish is, way out there in 20 foot of water on a long bombing Carolina rig cast, your angle is like this. So that's why it takes a longer, stronger hook set to get the hook into that fish. But let's say you're still here, you're flipping a bush that's right here. All of a sudden your angle goes from here to there. And so your hook set has to become a lot more vertical as opposed to horizontal to the side. And when I'm fishing around a slack lining hook set type area, again, the angle's higher, so I'm normally doing more of a hop than I am a sideways drag. And so I'm gonna hop it or lift it up, feel the bite, quickly drop my rod tip and bring it up and snap to the exact same shoulder as the strong sweep hook set, but a lot faster and with a lot more power. And usually, especially if you're throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon or braided line, a hook set from this distance, snapped like this, absolutely gets the hook in their face. And if you can do it, and it's not like detrimental to your fishing success, give them the business. Gosh, dang, wow, gosh, that one hurt my wrist. My goodness. What a chunk. This hook set and the third one we're going to talk about are not for the dude who wants to enjoy the fight. Flipping and pitching in shallow cover is to get the fish out of there as quickly as physically possible to get them in your boat, your kayak, or to the bank. And so if I can get away with it, I'm going to go with a strong snap hook set the vast majority of the time. But in some shallow cover scenarios, you're going to have the bite take place at a certain point of your lift that it just doesn't feel right to drop your rod tip and set the hook. And so in those scenarios, I use a really fun hook set that doesn't always work out, but it's necessary, and I call it the lift set. Gosh, dang it, man. So let me show you how that looks in practice. If I flip my creature bait out there, let's say to some cattails or lily pads or underneath the dock, and I go to lift, ideally I get the bite right here as I'm dropping back down, but sometimes the bite occurs when the rod tip is all the way up at like 0 or 1 o'clock. I mean, like your bicep is engaged, and I feel like if I drop the rod tip like this and set the hook, it may give the fish time to spit it out. And so what do? Well, you kind of do a strong snap hook set, but from a higher position. And if done successfully, it looks something like this. Gosh, do I still have him? I do. I think. Yep, there he is, there he is, there he is. Nice one. Oh my gosh, fatty. Holy cow, what a fat one. Whoa, another absolute chunk. And while this hook set is not ideal for sure, sometimes when you get a bite this high in your lift, it's the only way to go. And so it helps to have, like I mentioned, a longer length rod, a heavier power rod, and some thicker line, 20-pound fluorocarbon, 50, 65-pound braid. And if you've got that, I'm telling you, you just have to muster up the strongest, quickest activation of your muscles that you can without giving the fish time to spit the lure out. And once you set the hook and you have the fish in, it is so crucial to keep the pressure on, even more so than the other two types of hook sets, because the lift set does not allow you as much strength to get the hook into that fish, but you can still land almost every single one that bites. You just got to go the strongest, quickest activation possible. And so after watching that, you may think, Tyler, how am I going to know which hook set to do in those scenarios? Well, it's kind of a feel thing. You're going to learn over time, all right, how far away is the bite taking place? Is it close? Is it far? Is it deep? Is it shallow? And it's going to become complete muscle memory, but I promise you're going to get it eventually. And now that we know the three main types of creature bait hook sets, I say we head back to the studio to discuss what type of colors you need of creature baits in your tackle box. And the answer to this honestly is not all that complicated. With all the different colors of soft plastics you can buy at Tackle Warehouse of creature baits, in my opinion, the only two main color styles you need are a natural color variant that you have confidence in for your bodies of water, and a dark colored variant that you have confidence in your body of water. So for me, that is a watermelon or a green pumpkin, some kind of greenish, brownish variant. There's a whole lot of variations, whether it's like green pumpkin purple or watermelon red, anything in that vein, I have confidence in. And then for my dark color, it is some variation of black and blue. And the reason why I don't fish normally any like crazy colors of creature baits like, you know, bubblegum or morning dawn, which I'm sure they make those colors, and unless it's for like a trailer on a vibrating jig or a spinnerbait or a swim jig, I'm not throwing whites or chartreuses. The reason for that is because A, I haven't had much success doing it, but B, in my low IQ bass science mind, I just don't think they make as much sense for the locations that you're throwing a creature bait and what you're trying to imitate in those areas. I've talked about this in this video, and I think in tons of my videos here on the channel. I think a creature bait, for the most part, imitates a bluegill, some kind of bream. And in the places you throw it, so the deep structure, the shallow cover, bluegills infest those areas. And so could you catch fish on a crazy color? You could. I just have confidence, and I found everywhere I travel in the country, these two main colorways, dark and natural, are all you need. But hey, if you've got a color that you like that I don't talk about here on the channel and you have confidence in, take my color selections and throw them out the window, because you gotta do what works for you. Now, does water clarity affect which color I throw? Absolutely. For me, at least my confidence in clear water, I'm gonna stick with more of the natural colorways, and in dirtier water, of course, I'm gonna go with the black and blues. But the one thing that I tend to try if I'm fishing shallow, heavy cover, whether it's clear water or dirty, is going with a darker color pattern. And that's because, let's say you're fishing around stuff that you see on the screen right now that is super thick aquatic vegetation. I don't care how bright the sun is not gonna penetrate much into that vegetation or the water underneath the vegetation. So bass living down there are not in total darkness, but it's a lot darker than it is if they were just to go a few feet out into open water. And so that's where I have found I catch more fish on a black and blue as opposed to a watermelon. But you could raise the argument, and I would not necessarily disagree with you, that Tyler, if it's, close to pitch black underneath the grass, does the color even matter? And you know what? That is a great question that I just might test on the Tackle Time series here on the channel. So stay tuned, because I'm sure I could throw a bubblegum creature bait in there and maybe get the same amount of bites, maybe more bites, who knows? So just like most things in bass fishing, if you like black and blue, throw black and blue. If you like watermelon red, throw watermelon red. It's not that hard. Now for my fifth creature bait tip, I actually feel like it's more beneficial if y'all watch an entire video dedicated to each style of creature bait fishing. So my two favorites, the Texas rig in all water depths and the Carolina rig, which is a Texas rig in a different presentation. I will have each of those videos clickable up here in the corner if you guys want to continue watching my content. If not, hey, have a good day. My name's Tyler. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you can, shop for all your tackle, your creature baits, your hooks, your rods, reels, and line using the affiliate links down in the video description. As always, it's a dang pleasure, and we'll see y'all next time right here on TRF.